Hi, everyone. This is Charles Hoskinson broadcasting live from warm, sunny Colorado. Always warm, always sunny, sometimes Colorado. Today is December 6th, 2021. Year's almost over. It's been one hell of a year. Let me tell you, we've had a lot of ups, we've had a lot of downs, and an enormous amount of work that we've all done collectively as a community, my company, the foundation, everybody. Proud of everyone. It's been tough. I just got back from Vegas. Every year I go for NFR, and it's a big cowboy event called National Finals Rodeo. And what's nice about NFR is it's a basically the Super Bowl of rodeo. So they have bullfighting and the kind where they buck you off, not the kind you stab them. And they have all kinds of things like team roping and barrel racing. It's a really fun event. Also, I get to sprawl around Vegas. I ran into a few people that recognize me. You'll see me every now and then. It's the first week of December. A lot of fun. Also go to Cowboy Christmas, the largest shopping experience for cowboys. They sell boots. They sell pretty much everything from furniture to ATVs to I don't know, guided hunts for bison. It's pretty wild. So nice little diversion. But while running around, I did have a chance to interact with some of our people and the Sunday team. And actually, Sunday Swap, I believe, launched its testnet today. It was scheduled for Sunday, but that was the fun day. But I guess they decided it needed to be done on a manic Monday. But it's the first of, actually, not even the first. There are others, but it's a very significant event. And there are going to be many other things launching soon. And of course, I'll broadcast to you guys my thoughts and feelings, and of course, offer help where and when it makes sense, especially on the technical side. But it's a big moment for us as an ecosystem. It's not easy to build a completely new programming language, programming paradigm, and a way of thinking about dApps. And as an ecosystem, we had to do this first with staking, a completely different model of staking than what had been proposed before. And now we're doing it all over again with development. And it's a very vibrant ecosystem. There's tons of people running around. They're very excited. They're pushing forward. And this is the first of many. And just like staking is now we just say, hey, fun little side thing. It used to be a huge thing of when Shelley, and now people are saying when Gauguin. And we're still seeing an enormous wave of criticism and Twitter trolls and negativity and toxicity and just a sheer amount of inhumane lack of patience. But all things considered, there's a much larger, brighter, more beautiful community out there. That not only is patient, but actually is actively engaged in participating and building up an ecosystem. So let's talk for a minute about what a dApp ecosystem looks like. So there's an acronym to keep in your mind, and it's called ACIDIC, ACIDIC. And ACIDIC stands for application. So the first three parts are about developers. So developer acquisition, we get asked all the time, where will you get developers? Where will you get developers? We have plenty of developers. But acquisition is one component of it. And then the I component is developer interaction. So how do you work with those developers? Incentives. How do you incentivize those developers? How do you get them the resources they need to get things done? CIDIC is collaboration. So that's the working part. And you can either do that in a static, or you can do that in a static passive way, or you can do that in a dynamic active way. So kind of a static passive way of doing that would be just, hey, we have these tutorials and this documentation and these YouTube lectures and so forth. Just watch them, listen to them, do things with them. And hopefully you'll learn enough to be able to do your own thing. The actual active component is, hey, I'm going to ask a question as a developer, and somebody's going to answer that. That's like a Stack Exchange. Or it can be an interactive development where they write some stuff and somebody outside of that organization reviews the pull requests and gives some comments and feedbacks about ways to optimize things. So that's called co-sourcing or PR review, or these types of things. And then the D in acidic is application deployment. So there is a question of where, when you are a developer, do you actually deploy your application? What platforms do you deploy it on? And the IC is application interaction. So if I'm a user, how do I interact with it? Am I interacting with it on a cell phone? Do I have a direct relationship with the app developer? Is this like a centralized application with a decentralized component? Like, for example, a video game. Let's say that you're World of Warcraft and you issue WoW gold, and that gold is now tradable. It could be an asset, or your Magic the Gathering, through Hasbro. And you want to actually have Magic cards as NFTs. It's still centralized. It's still a game, but yet now there are components that are decentralized. And then finally, curation. So curation is basically the idea of, okay, you, the community, or some third party, make some statement about quality and use and utility for the ecosystem, for that application. For example, your DEX. This DEX is great. It's very responsive. No, it's garbage. We have concerns about security of the system, et cetera, et cetera. So that's acidic, ACDIC, acid, IC, acidic. And so acquisition, curation, incentives, deployment, interaction, and curation. Okay. And C is collaboration, excuse me. A little tired today. It's been a very long day. But I wanted to make an AMA with you guys. So we have a strategy along all those lines, and we're working with now a lot of the dApp developers on the collaboration component. The incentives component, Catalyst is covering that. They're finding their own ways, like ISPOs, these types of things. But on the C side, collaboration, it's very vibrant, and we're learning a lot. For example, 3 SIPs have come as a direct result of collaborating with the DEXs, things that can be done to improve the development experience of Plutus. And then also a lot of conversations about how to optimize. So the first wave of applications, when they hit market, what's going to happen is eventually that source code is going to hit market. And then you're going to see design patterns and canonical ways of doing things. And so it's kind of the trainers training the trainers. So you're going to see a whole wave of that first wave of apps become basically the backbone for the second wave, and then the third wave, and then the fourth wave. Really, we're starting to also see a lot of the magic of the Cardano model. We suffered tremendously as infrastructure developers trying to build the right programming model and trying to build the right languages, and really thinking carefully about how to scale that model. You see, the reality is, when you talk about high performance Cardano, it's very easy to move things off chain in a UTXO model. Vitalik recently wrote a little blog post called Endgame, where he was talking about the things that are necessary to get Ethereum where it needs to go. The models that they have chosen make the approaches he's proposing difficult. They're not impossible, but they're certainly difficult. And the extended UTXO model makes those types of approaches actually far easier in our ecosystem. So, I'm very comfortable with where we sit, and it's going to be a long series of months as these things wake up and people deploy things and build things. And all along the way, crypto Twitter and a lot of the broader cryptocurrency community is just going to be kicking and screaming like petulant man-children. And that's what we just have to deal with as a project. So you just have to kind of shut out the noise and just keep your nose down and push forward. And that's where we're at. The good news is every single metric you can measure about the health of Cardano from January 1st, 2020 to what we're going to close out the year, December 31st, 2021. Every metric over the last 24 months has been just absolutely exceptional, from the amount of ADA staked to the amount of active users, to the Catalyst participation, to the social signals, to account creation on Reddit, Telegram, and other things, to the actual transaction volume on Cardano, the growth of use and utility of Cardano, the dApp ecosystem that's fermenting for Cardano, even venture capital investment. Every metric you can measure, meaningful or otherwise, has improved. It's not a single one that hasn't. So that's a something that when you pay attention to all the noise, you don't sometimes see. But when you silence that noise, you cancel it out, you actually look at reality as it sits, it's quite impressive to see how much that's grown. And the other thing is that when we look to 2022, many of the hard problems that all of the competing chains are really tackling with and understanding how difficult they are, we've already solved those as an ecosystem. We know where interoperability is going to come. We know how to spin up high performance side chains. We understand how to pipeline and how to introduce input endorsers, which gets us the same type of performance you'd expect in these DAC protocols, but yet we don't sacrifice the security model. We have a really good development model that's being co-developed with external projects. And as they build, we build, and there's a beautiful feedback loop there. There's already 3 SIPs that have come out of just the last 2 months of collaboration. And that model is only going to get better and better over time. And it's very easy to put these layer 2 solutions like rollups or state channels into our ecosystem. In fact, significantly easier on the state channel side because we co-designed Hydra with the base ledger. The noise would have you believe that all of this doesn't exist, or it's a fantasy because it's 10 years out, and by then all the network effect is lost. But the people actually paying attention realize that we're developing faster than most people in the ecosystem. We're still number 1 in many cases, many weeks for GitHub commits. And the noise would have you believe that maybe that's just hello world being appended again and again and again. The reality is, when you actually look at it, it's real software, it's real code, it's very significant updates that are accelerating, and more teams are coming in. More decentralization is occurring at the core. And next year, we're going to see the formation of a very serious industry-leading open source project, which I think is the bureaucracy of open source and the governance of open source done right and built for high participation of dozens, if not hundreds of companies. So it's important sometimes as the year comes to a close, you take a step back and you zoom out a bit and you ask yourself, what has really been accomplished? Reliable release cycles, 4 hard fork events, a huge increase in adoption, actual third parties coming in, investing time, effort, and money to build and deploy on the platform, real market development from the legacy world and Fortune 500 companies like Dish to adoption in Africa, an incredibly successful Africa tour. We went to 6 nation states. We met with 2 heads of state, and we had conversations with dozens of companies throughout Africa, some of which have tens of millions of customers, like ShopRite, which is the Walmart of Africa. And a lot of the things that I said in my TED Talk about microfinance, which were aspirational in 2014, are now a reality that will be started in 2022 because of the existence of the connections we've built and the Cardano platform as a whole. So when you see those types of things, it bodes very well for the future. And all of that is enabled by the fact that we have such a huge community of millions of people throughout the world who are very passionate. Now, some people have their entrances and some people have their exits. There was a kid that was just born and parents named him Cardano. And that's a great name to have, I'd say. Girolamo Cardano was a polymath and was one of the smartest men ever to live. And it had a great history and legacy and touched many different fields, some practical and some otherwise. In addition, the Cardano protocol, I firmly believe, will be one of the most transformative pieces of technology of the 21st century. So if we all work together, we can make that a pretty good decision. Other people have their exits. My good friend Vasil passed away this week, and that was real tough. I've known him for a while. He was a brilliant mathematician and also just a thoroughly good human being. He loved to plant trees. He planted throughout his life over 10,000 ginkgo biloba trees. And many of you may remember that when we had the 2nd anniversary of Cardano, we went to Plovdiv, Bulgaria, and hung out with Vasil and planted trees with Vasil. And because there was a quote that I always remembered, great societies are built by old men who plant trees whose shade they shall never know. And the trees that we planted in Bulgaria Fossil didn't live long enough to sit in that shade. But in the decades that come, when shade eventually comes, those trees will be there. And if we look at the analogy and carry it to Cardano, that's the reality of this project. People enter, people exit. And despite that pattern, we continue to grow. We continue to succeed. We continue to build great things together. And we take the memory and lessons of these people with us along the way. It's so important to shut out the noise and really think deeply about what are we trying to accomplish? What's the point of this industry? What's the point of this technology? In the coming months, things are probably going to get more difficult for the cryptocurrency space. There's a perfect storm brewing of issues, a mixture of overregulation, a mixture of unrealistic expectations, a mixture of a failure to deliver on a lot of the core projects, and likely market downturn because nothing can grow forever. When you put all of these things together, what ends up happening is you enter into a cycle where you have a spiraling pessimism. And that spiraling pessimism makes a lot of the fair weather people who entered into the industry feel like the industry has no point and that the industry is providing no use, utility, or value to the world. But it's important, again, to zoom out and actually ask, what's the point of cryptocurrencies? What are these seeds, these trees that we've been planting as an industry? Well, I said again and again and again on these AMAs, to the extent that I've been accused of being a cult leader or idealistic or crazy, take your pejorative, that I feel that this industry is at the crossroads of humanity. When we look to the 21st century, the human race is in the business of, in the market for a new social operating system. Basically, we want to decide how we're going to run society. What is the social contract? And everything is up for grabs. This is why you see things like the World Economic Forum say statements like, you'll own nothing and be happy. This is why you see certain political spectrums attaching justice to every word, whether it be social justice or environmental justice or economic justice, and this bizarre idea that somehow that makes everything right. And this is why you see a lot of people fundamentally unhappy and taking to the streets. We're also living at a time of great disinformation and great trauma inflicted by a pandemic, where it's killed a lot of people, and the government response to it has scarred many people's trust for institutions. And we see the hypocrisy and the lack of legitimacy and the corruption in the hearts and souls of so many who purport to be there to help us. And so when we see all these things and the old institutions, philosophies, religions of the past don't give us the solace that we need and the courage we need to navigate through them, everybody at the moment is looking for hope and they're looking for new systems. Some people will have you believe that some of the darkest and most terrible systems of the 20th century and 19th century are the solutions to these problems. Other people will want to have you adopt new systems, and they have all kinds of new terminology. And blockchain is one of them. It is, in a sense, something beyond just a piece of technology. In many ways, it's a life philosophy about how should information be treated, who's in charge, where does trust come from, why should you believe something, maximizing the level of access and decentralization, minimizing the control of the few. That's a life philosophy. It's a political philosophy. It's an economic philosophy. And it's being applied to many facets of society. And that's why our industry exists. And this is why so many people are so passionate. When you strip away the fair weather people who have entered believing falsely that they're going to get rich quick, what's left behind is a tireless minority that feel that if we're clever enough, fast enough, in the right places, apply these things, we can fundamentally transform all of society, the entire world. And as we look to the institutions that used to have legitimacy, like the media, the health industry, We look at the governments that have no longer served us well, and we ask, well, what are we going to replace them with? This technology we're building can do that. There has never been a time in human history where a person could propose a system that can simultaneously move billions, if not trillions of dollars worth of value at no or very minimal fee anywhere in the world instantly, whereas at the same time be reused to be the voting system of any country and be far superior to any other voting system, whereas at the same time be used to be the backbone of your identity, whereas at the same time be used to validate claims about products and services in a supply chain, at the same time verify academic credentials, mine medical records, and hundreds of other use and utility. And when asked who controls this, who owns this, the answer is everyone, and thus no one. There's never been a time in human history where we have within our grasp that technology. And what this industry is collectively doing is figuring out how to scale that and get adoption and get it into the hands of as many people as possible. Because once they leave the cave, they don't want to go back into it. And we have a small window of time to get it done, because if we don't, we'll lose that window and it'll be replaced with something far more dystopian. So, despite the coming pessimism, the spiral, the negative market sentiment, all the kinds of things that are likely to be challenges in 2022. And of course, we as an industry will fight. We'll fight to continue the growth of the movement, to get more nation states to adopt it, to get sensible regulations instead of insane regulations, fight for real use, utility, and adoption, and fight to change people's hearts and minds, where they realize that the raw avarice of trying to acquire as much as possible for as little work as possible and eschew any notion of personal responsibility is a senseless pursuit. There will be a counterpunch to this, and we'll see it. We already saw it with the infrastructure bill, and we saw it with a lot of other things, and that was sad. And more to come, probably, as an industry as a whole. Now, we do our best as an ecosystem to weather it, and there's a lot of allies these days. And hopefully the tribalism gets better. The one thing I want for Christmas is for everybody just to start getting along in our industry. It's extraordinary to me that when people are so close in philosophy and viewpoint, and in some cases technology, they can be so far apart as people. It's extraordinary. You don't see this in other industries. You don't see in physics or biology or, cell phone manufacturing or whatever. Pick an industry. The amount of tribalism, hate, and vitriol that our industry has for each other. And as long as we're doing that to each other, there's no reality where we're ever going to be able to overcome the real enemy, which is the legacy systems that hold 3 billion people in the human race down, destroy our environment, and divide us in ways that make us hate people we've never met and should never have grievances against. That has to stop. And the only way it's going to stop is if we get better systems that are more fair. And the only way we do that is we have to work together. So we'll see in 2022 whether that's accomplished. People will still try to divide us. Books will be published. Podcasters will say things. Reddit and Twitter will continue to pour rivers of verbal diarrhea. But it's up to each and every one of us to transcend that, step above it, and realize that we do have a finite window. Okay. So let's get to our questions.